Hi, my name is Sermons Gillis, and I am very excited today to hold what I call a legacy interview. Even though we hear our great Theosophist talk about different topics and principles of Theosophy, we often don't get a chance to hear their story. You know, where were they born? How did they find Theosophy? What is their spiritual journey like? And so today I'm very excited to have the former president of the Theosophical Lodge in Houston. He is also a meditation teacher, an amazing person. I met him when I was a member of the Houston Lodge. So I'm very excited to have as our guest today, Fali Engineer. Hi, Fali.
Thank you, and nice to see you and hear you.
So good to see you. I want to just start really in the very beginning. Where were you born?
I was born in a city called Sukkur, Sukkur, in undivided India, in the Sindh province. This Sukkur city became famous because the world's biggest barrage was being built when I was born there. My father was an engineer on the barrage, and I was born in the railway hospital during the construction of the barrage. So that Sukkur city became very famous because of the Sukkur barrage.
And what is the Sukkur barrage?
No, Sukkur barrage was a barrage, a dam across the big river called Indus River.
Okay.
And my father was an engineer there, and I was born there long before the Theosophical, my contact. So I was born in Sukkur city, and that city is still not so well known now because the barrage is very old now. In 1920s, the barrage was built.
Well, what year were you born?
Pardon?
What year were you born?
1927.
And I forgot to tell you that we're so happy to have Fali's friend and my friend with him. This is Jamshed, and he is going to help translate if Fali can't hear it. Fali, what year did you say you were born? What year?
What year were you born? What year were you born?
1927.
1927.
Yeah, 1927. I was born there when my father was working on the barrage. And at the age of 5, when I was 5, the barrage was completed and we left Sukkur, my father and mother. And my father and mother were originally from Bombay, as most we are Zoroastrians by religion. And the majority of the Parsis lived in Bombay or India. But my mother and father had a difference of opinion with their own families over their marriage. So they left Bombay and never visited Bombay again. They were upset with the way their families considered their marriage. And so I went to Bombay later on, but my father and mother never visited Bombay again. And from Sukkur barrage, my father got a job in Burma, Rangoon. Went to Rangoon, then we came to Karachi, but my main education was in South India, Madras and Coimbatore. And there I got my contacts with the culture, ancient culture of South India, which is different from North India. The inhabitants of South India are the original inhabitants of India, Dravidians, and they occupied the whole of India for thousands of years. But when the Aryans came from the north, two groups, one came to India and the other went to the Middle East and Persia. So I was luckily educated in a culture of peace and moderation, and that has helped me throughout my life. My exposure to the South Indian culture. And I studied there all the way to engineering college. I graduated in 1950. I was the first batch of that college in which I graduated. So recently they contacted me to give this interview like you are interviewing me. They interviewed me as the oldest living graduate of the engineering college of 1950, 72 years ago. So they will broadcast my speech and biodata the next week all over India.
Oh, that is wonderful. Well, we'll have to get that link so that we can link that link with this video too, so we can have that interview as well. That's wonderful. Well, you were in Madras, which I think is now Chennai. And
Yes. Madras is now Chennai.
And that is close.
Chennai, Chennai. I'm using the old word, Bombay.
Yeah.
I like those words.
and that's really close to Adyar. Were you introduced to Adyar when you were there, to the Theosophical ways and principles when you were growing up in Chennai?
Yeah.
Were you?
We used to have picnics at Adyar. I did not know that I would one day become a member of that society. It's when I came later on to realize that I visited that place as a schoolboy, having picnics on the estate.
Oh my goodness. Well, you were there in southern India. Did your parents teach you the Zoroastrian ways, and were those things, was that right for you? Did you enjoy that religion, embrace that religion? Was that right for you? Did you flourish in that religion?
In South India, did your parents teach you Zoroastrian religion, and did you enjoy?
Luckily, my parents were not very well religious in the normal sense. They brought us up to be ethical and did not interfere with our beliefs in any shape or form. Never taught me anything. I didn't learn anything from them from religious point of view. And I luckily escaped the orthodoxy of normal members of our community. So I was free to choose, and that is how helped me to go into other cultures and philosophies other than our own, to satisfy my aspiration for spiritual growth.
When did you start your spiritual growth, and what did that spiritual journey look like?
What happened was I graduated in 1950, and my parents were in Karachi, which became part of Pakistan in 1947. So when I left India, I entered Pakistan and began my career throughout in Pakistan till I migrated to America in '87. During my stay in Pakistan, I was exposed, I was not spiritual or a seeker. I had a good career, construction engineer, and worked my way up. But a book came into my hand by a colleague, Life of Ramakrishna. Ramakrishna, as you know, was the guru of Swami Vivekananda, who came to address the World Parliament of Religions in 1893. When I read that book by Romain Rolland, a French architect, my eyes were opened to a new view of our human potential. I was not aware of it till I read Ramakrishna's life. As you know, he was unique because he had what is called unity consciousness, the highest and the seventh level of consciousness, in which every connection he can visualize, it matures in him. He is unique because at the age of 30, he was a priest, illiterate priest in a temple outside of Calcutta called Dakshineshwar on the banks of the Ganges. As a priest, the Kali temple, you know that the statue is black. Kali is a black statue. And he was a priest there, but he was always in a trance. Anything of beauty, he would lose his senses and become non-physical. He had to be brought down to physical by tapping him on his head. Now, he heard of Islam from a Maulvi, a fakir, and he said, what are you worshipping? So the Maulvi said, we have this Quran and we have this prayer. As soon as he heard that, he says, okay, let me research your religion. And you can imagine he left the temple, took off the holy thread, and went into a hut and meditated for 3-4 days. And then he came back and said, correct, your religion, I found the founder, a very tall, grave person, bearded, and he walked into me. This is a feature of his life. Whenever he feels any beauty, that beauty comes into him. That's a characteristic of unity consciousness. So he verified the bona fides of Islam and went back as a priest, illiterate priest. Again, after 7 years, he talked to a neighbor and he said, what are you reading? The neighbor said, I'm reading my Bible. And he talked of Jesus Christ. Ramakrishna said, okay, let me verify what you say. Again, he took off his thread, left the temple, meditated, and in a few days he described in great detail Jesus Christ coming into his body and telling him that I'm very upset with my followers. They are not listening to me. He even mentioned that. You can imagine his conversation with Jesus Christ. So he was unique. He verified the unity of religions within himself, not as a theory or as a philosophy. Ramakrishna then asked, whenever he meditated, he would ask questions from that statue. If he was asked a difficult question, he would go to the statue and say, Mother, what reply should I give to this person? And the mother, actually the statue would convey in words and thoughts the answer, and he would go back and answer that question, although he was illiterate. So he was a remarkable man. And then he wanted to know what his mission was. He says, yes, when I meditate, I get all this information, but why am I born here? For what purpose? And the answer he was given was, you have to gather disciples like Jesus Christ gathered the apostles. Same. So out of the lot of people who met him, he selected a few group and concentrated on them to convey his mission, which is called the Ramakrishna mission. And to get a leader, he selected the monk Swami Vivekananda. He was a student, 19 years of age, when he met Ramakrishna, and he was skeptical of Ramakrishna because he was educated. He said, I can't believe what you're saying. God is like this and God is like that. So Ramakrishna one day put his foot on his chest and he became the monk instantaneously. The energy he transferred was sufficient to transform him from a student, and he became the monk Vivekananda, and he became famous when he went to America, addressed the first parliament, and stayed 3 years, started Vedanta centers, went back to India, and took charge of the Ramakrishna mission. And the Ramakrishna mission, Ramakrishna said, the mission is to serve the poor. That is your mission. Never mind your philosophies, that is okay, but this age, you serve the poor. So even in Houston, there's a Vedanta society and the Ramakrishna mission monks are here, and they serve the poor, homeless. Whenever the hurricane comes, they serve all over the world. So Ramakrishna was the one of my teachers who influenced me to seek what the path that he lived. He lived that path, and I began to devote my time to the study of Indian philosophy. Now you ask for what living teachers influenced me. I was in Lahore working. I was lucky to get a Sufi master, a genuine Sufi master, fully enlightened, in a mosque in a village 70 miles from Lahore. I came in contact with him. He immediately helped me and understood my desire, and he kept me over weekends in retreats in his mosque, which is grass roof and mud floor. And during a particular 10-day retreat, I got that experience which people talk of losing their identity and experiencing the great power we have in our higher self. For many hours, I was lost in that experience, and I've written the article which has been published also, that at that time, there is no fear. Death is an impossibility. Anything you intend will mature. And I wrote at that time that if a lion came to me, I would just pat it and say, don't bother me now, just sit down, be quiet. And who would be saying, if a lion came to us, we would be very frightened. But at that time, because the contact was that which is imperishable core of us, we are born with that imperishable core which survives death, life after life after life. It's dormant in most cases like us, but sometimes when the power is released, you experience your own true nature, which is that soul power. And that opened my eyes to the possibility of the evolution towards that awakening, that imperishable core, and making it direct into my life. So I have used that experience to motivate me to always utilize as much as I can of that energy, of that imperishable core, to elevate the perishable core, which is our personality. And the more we elevate the personality, the greater our actions will reflect the qualities of the imperishable core. And that's how I took to Theosophy, to verify again. And that's another story, but the two living masters who helped me are the Sufi master and Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who brought meditation to the West in the 50s. And luckily, he qualified me as a TM teacher in Switzerland after I learned TM in Pakistan from some American teachers. And I said I wanted to be a teacher. I experienced that the TM transcendental. I experienced that just as I experienced in the mosque. I experienced the highest value of TM and said, I want to teach this. They sent me to Switzerland. Maharishi and I spoke the same language, Hindi. We got on very well. He took me and qualified me after accelerating a course and said, you go back and teach TM in Pakistan. He kept in touch with me. 6 years later, he called me to Delhi and said, I want to teach you the advanced technique. There's a technique that is add-on to TM, and I want you to do that. I went to live in his ashram in Rishikesh, and he passed me out in 2 visits. I went to India, and I can now qualify to teach the advanced technique called the TM Siddhi technique. Siddhi is a Sanskrit word for power, jewels, perfection. So again, like Ramakrishna, if he wanted, he could mature his intention. The Siddhi technique also is an attempt to mature your intentions in a certain way based on Patanjali's aphorisms of yoga. You must have heard of Patanjali, and he's the first yogi whose writings were laid down in writing. Before that, it was verbal. So we have got his aphorisms right there in his Patanjali's yoga. And Maharishi used Patanjali's chapter on Siddhis for this advanced technique. So these 2 living teachers played a great role in my life. Coming to Theosophy, I was, you know, Zareen Balsara.
Yes.
You remember her at the lodge?
Yes, Zareen. Yes.
Zareen Balsara, she was a vice president also. And her mother was the first Montessori teacher in Pakistan, taught by Maria Montessori personally in Karachi. And she was the president of the Theosophical Lodge of Karachi, which was founded again by Annie Besant. Just as Annie Besant chartered our lodge in Houston, she chartered the Karachi Lodge, which is older than our lodge. And Gul Minwala, that was her name. She was a Theosophist. And then she talked to me about Theosophy. And because of my experiences with the Sufi master, I at once was attracted to Theosophy. Now the problem with Theosophy is the word itself misleads a lot of people. When I say Theosophy, They say, okay, give me a book, I'll read and then I'll understand all about it. I said, no, it's not like that. It means spiritual wisdom. They say, oh, that's spiritual wisdom. That's too much for me. I can't understand that. I can't understand Theosophy. The problem is that that's why the membership is not increasing but decreasing in America, because the word itself doesn't ring a bell like some popular theory of science or quantum mechanics. So it's a specialized. Now, when we say Theosophy, we know it means spiritual wisdom, divine wisdom. Theo is divine, Sophia is wisdom, Theo is divine, divine wisdom. Now, how to acquire divine wisdom is a process. If you read any subject, you get the information in that book. You read any book, you read the words, you get the information. Now, if you're more interested in the book, you begin to explore it more and more, and that becomes knowledge of the book. So any trade a person is good at is a knowledge of the book that started your courses we take gives us knowledge. So even Theosophy book you take, it's information and you digest it properly. So when you digest a meal, then you experience that meal. You don't see it on the table. That's information that this is a meal. Then when you eat it, you digest it. You say, oh, this is a good meal. This has got good taste. So you transfer information into knowledge initially. If you're further interested, then you use that knowledge in your daily life. That is called wisdom. That is how the Theosophy is fully explained by the phrase divine wisdom when you utilize it in activity. This is very important. I may know everything about Theosophy and this thing and that thing and Madame Blavatsky, but if I don't utilize that and don't convey it and don't live it, I am not a Theosophist. So this is a very high bar for a Theosophist. He can be knowledgeable, but not wise. Wisdom is utilizing knowledge to further evolution of the community of life itself. So and why I appreciate Theosophy, it's got three objects. We know that people are familiar with the motto, there is no religion higher than truth, but there's also the three objects. And I found the beauty of Theosophy is that the three objects are fully explained in the Theosophy itself. This is not normal. There are organizations which say, we have this mission and give a statement, but you will not find the solution to the mission in their literature. They expect it to be found outside. This is different in Theosophy. If you read the literature, and so when I began reading the literature, I found that any statement they made, I could attach it to the object. So now when I read a theosophical statement, I can attach it to one of the three or all the three and explain it on the basis of the objects. So the objects are very important for a theosophist to understand and the divine wisdom of this teaching. And at the lodge, when I came here, I immediately became a member in Karachi Lodge. After Gul Minwala talked to me about it, I became a member. I started a small lodge in Lahore on my own, giving books to read and taking them back like a library. And I managed Lahore, but then I came to America in 87 when I became 60 years of age and was retired from my job. My wife and I came here on a green card, and there I heard of the lodge and began attending the meetings. When I came here in 87, the lodge was in a very, to be frank, deplorable situation. Hardly 2-3 people would come. There would be hardly any discussion. Some tape was played, and then I taught TM to a remarkable couple, Anne Toft. Did you meet her? Anne Toft.
I
No.
did meet her, but she passed away.
She and her husband, when I taught them TM here, and I talked of the lodge, for some reason, they began to spend a lot of money upgrading the lodge without any reservation. I didn't ask them to do it, but they were so attracted, and both of them cleaned up the lodge, brought the books from the back, improved the place, and automatically people began to come more and more. So she served they spent a fortune without any remuneration on the lodge. You can imagine that the philanthropy. And she was a president for some time, and then I became the president, and so on and so forth. So the lodge is still existing because of such you can say it's an internal TOS, Theosophical Order of Service within the lodge also. It's functioning, and you are aware of it. And the theory is that every lodge is guarded, protected, and helped by the masters, unknown to us. We don't know that, but the energy is there, and you can utilize that energy if you are sensitive to their presence. And so every lodge has this guardian's wall of the Theosophical masters, which are teachers of Madame Blavatsky.
Let me ask you, do you consider that not only the lodge has that protection? You know, there are a lot of people that are members of the society that do not have a lodge that they can go to because they don't have a group, a meeting group. Do you see that same protection is extended to all members as well? What's your thought on that?
Pardon?
She wants to know, there are people who are Theosophists, but they don't have a lodge to go to. So
Yeah.
Are they protected also by the masters?
You see,
And guided.
And guided.
you don't need a lodge. You need 3 members to form a Theosophical group. I formed a group in Houston with 3 members, and we had regular meetings, and it's still existing after 20 years. 3 members is all that's required. National will send you the literature. They'll encourage you. You can have your meetings. You can discuss things. You don't have to have a lodge.
Let me interrupt you. I understand that. I know that we can have study groups as well, but the National Lodge has members that are far out and they don't have a study group. And I'm just wondering if the same kind of guidance is offered to people who do not have a study group, they do not have a lodge.
Are they guided by the masters is what she wants to know. Those people who
You
don't
see,
have a lodge.
Or a study group.
Or a study group, yeah.
Hmm?
If people don't have a study group, don't have a lodge, are they guided and protected by the masters?
No. You are only on your own. Theosophy is very clear about this, that self, you have to evolve on your own with guidance, but you cannot depend on them to elevate you out of turn. Your own quality of life, your own karma is your own business. You have to develop over and over. We are told that we have to strive ourselves to progress, but you can get help if you want, but it's not there automatically because you're a Theosophist. That is not there. We are Theosophists when we go to the lodge, but when we leave the lodge, we are what we are. We can't claim that because I'm a Theosophist, I should be given favors by the masters. The master will favor people irrespective of Theosophists. They are concerned with very large other activities, not only with Theosophy. So they favor people to guide movements, leaders. They originated our American independence. Saint Germain is the guardian saint of America, and he encouraged and contrived to bring about the founders to found a Declaration of Independence. And he gave an oration from the chamber of 15 minutes when they were hesitating to sign the declaration. This oration is on record. He said, for hundreds of years, we were planning this great movement, this great experiment in democracy through this land. Signed the paper, and then the voice stopped. Nobody saw him. They all signed, and you got the declaration. So at critical points, the masters guide humanity in the direction because they know the future like an open book. So they can guide humanity in that direction at critical times. The French Revolution, the Russian Revolution, and the American independence were all originated behind the scene by masters.
Thank you. Let me ask you about service. What can you tell us about service, about theosophical service, about your service, service and TOS?
What can you talk about service, your service?
Yeah. Now, when I became read Roman Roland, read Ramakrishna, service to the poor. I had to bully you to otherwise it's okay. So when our community was in Lahore, light nothing, bulb nothing come.
Okay. Go ahead.
When I was in Lahore, we had about over 200 of we are called Parsis, though we are Zoroastrians by religion. Those outside of Persia or Iran are called Parsis. We had about 250 Parsis in Lahore, very good community. And there are 5 trusts. I became a member of all 5 trusts. I built 12 flats of the community for low rent, and next door constructed a new fire temple. And so I served the community in Pakistan, and they were good enough to give me a plaque of service. So the service is now not even defined, it's just automatic. And the main service is my TM teaching. TM organization charges $1,000 to teach. I don't charge, so people come to me. I went to Mexico. It was cheaper for them to call me to Mexico than to learn from Mexicans. I went to Colorado, traveled, teaching wherever people want to learn, I'm available. So service is now inborn without any definition. And service is sacrifice, but I'm not considering this as a sacrifice. I am happy to be of help, but without defining it as a service, because that gives us the ego some motivation, but I avoid considering it as service.
I love that, Fali. That basically is that when we're good people, that we reach out, that we're kind, we're compassionate, and if we
Yeah.
see something that needs to be done, we do it.
Yeah, the qualities. Now you asked about the family. The thing is, you know, Jesus Christ, when he was giving a talk to his devotees, a member of his family came and said, "Sir, they are waiting for you for lunch," you know, like the family. So Jesus says, "Who's my family? You are my family. They are my family. You are my family. There is only one family." So when I read that, I realized that I don't have to expect that my family members will automatically become attached to what I teach or to follow me. They are not there. They do it if they want to, but I don't want to insist on that. And if they don't, I don't feel any lack, because they like me for what I am without interfering with what I do.
Well, then you are like your parents, and that's the way they raised you, to be free to believe what you wanted to believe.
Yeah, so there's no distinction between my family and those who my friends like Jamshed and others. They help me, and that's one family. So we are not distinguishing between a brother or a sister or anybody, but friends, you know, the society. Yeah.
Thank you. What is the most important teaching of Theosophy to you? What do you think really has guided you in Theosophy?
What is the most important teaching of Theosophy?
Yeah, the most important teaching of Theosophy is that you are always to be aware of your constitution, which consists of 7 principles. 4 are one destined to die. When we die, 4 of the principles disintegrate. 3 continue onwards. So the highest teaching of Theosophy is that the life you lead in one life, you will have to face the same tendencies you generated here to take you into the next life. There's no shortcut, no heaven. All of a sudden, you lead any type of life and confess yourself and you reach heaven eternal or hell eternal. It doesn't talk of that. It gives details of your post-mortem state. And if you read that, it's very different from the orthodox religious teaching that you confess and believe and you go to heaven. He said there's a temporary heaven, temporary hell, but you have to face life till you develop your full potential. So for better or worse, do your best in any life and it will help you in your next life and the next life. To me, that's the highest teaching of Theosophy, apart from the philosophy, which is also very interesting. But from a practical point of view, from a normal person, it's this, that you have to become, so there are some guidelines to achieve this in a lifetime. And the guideline is that you got to have ideals. By having ideals, you counter the lower ideas you have about yourself. Ideals are superior and necessary for your growth. Then you must have an aspiration in your desire so that you counter the lower desires. You know, we have got desires, many levels. Everything is on 7 levels. The lower desires is selfishness, no concern for other people. You get what you want. So by having aspiration, you cover that, you elevate your desire, and then you go into service, altruism. So if you follow these 3 guidelines, you are drawing on soul power and elevating your personality and reflecting it into society. So this is, to me, the main practical value of Theosophy.
So are these the principles that you think are most important for people to learn? If, you know, what would you hope that new students in the Theosophical society would learn once they join? What would you hope they would learn?
What would you hope that new students of Theosophy learn?
See, every student will learn according to his own background and thinking. They can't be uniform. The same teaching is received differently by, like when your children are being brought up, they're not, you bring them up in the same way, but they go different ways when they grow up. So I always, when I teach TM, I add Theosophy literature. I slip it into the TM literature. If they're interested, then I go more. If they're not interested, we don't force anybody. It's not that time. I'm also incomplete. So how can I judge something, an incomplete person judging an incomplete person?
Well, thank you so much. Well, Fali, this has been wonderful. Those are my questions, and I'm just wondering if you have any advice that you would like to impart or anything else you would like to say before we close.
Any advice you want to give before she's coming to an end? So is there any advice you want to give or anything else you want to say?
No, I'm happy that you are launching this legacy. It is necessary to have a record so that people coming later will see that how Theosophists were, their lives were based on theosophical principles, and they are encouraged to duplicate their own lives. It's always good to have, but I was wondering how you're going to ultimately locate it and make it available. That's up to you to decide how to go about it. The legacy is a good word. The legacy is a good word.
Thank you. I'll let you know where you can see this, where it's going to be posted. And Fali, thank you so very much. Jamshed, thank you for being here and helping as well. Yes.
Thank you, Anne, for launching this. Very happy to hear from you.
Thank you, Fali, for so much that you have meant in my life and in my husband Jim's life as well. We both love you.
Thank you. All the best to you.
Namaste.
Namaste.